It's February the 4th, 6:30, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was called by Michael a couple of weeks ago about a group wanting to come and give the national anthem, and I was excited to see it was some very young students, and it's nice that their parents have brought them here tonight, and they're so well dressed, and I don't know whether about their behavior, but I know they look sharp, they really do. And so at this time, this is the group from Hampton Roads Classical School in Ben's Church. Thank you all so much. It reminds me of when I used to go to the NASCAR races, and we would always sing the national anthem, and it always is a big deal and very exciting a way to start any meeting or sports event or whatever. But I really appreciate you bringing the kids out tonight, and thank you so much. And we'd like to have you back again.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you again. At this time, we have the manager's report for informational section.
Yes, sir. Included in your packet was the activity report for the previous month. If there's any questions, I would be glad to answer them. The committee report summaries are also included.
Does anyone have any questions for Michael at this time? If not, we have a presentation tonight by VDOT, and this is about the Cypress Creek Bridge project and the update on the Grace Street project.
All right, good afternoon, everyone here. Mr. Mayor, council members. Thanks for inviting me here to talk about the project, just give some updates. Yes, please. Sorry about that. So I think a couple things had changed from the time we did the slides till now. So you've already seen on the way here, we shifted traffic basically to the south side, to the north side from south side. So we were currently in phase one where we did all the work on one direction or on one side of the bridge. Basically did all the repairs on the top side, and now we shifted traffic to the other side. Next slide, please. I think the next few slides would be Just,
No.
no. All right, so we were in phase one, which was the south side where we did all the work on south side. Now we are shifting to north. Next slide, please. These are just some pictures of the work in progress. You would have seen that early in spring and summer where the beams were removed. So there was a total of 9 beams and 1 near span U. The 9 were towards Smithfield Station, like the spans A, B, and C, where we had to remove the entire beams because they were basically buried in mud. A lot of deterioration happened. So what we are doing now is replacing them with the lower profile beams, so they're not in mud completely, and also replacing the tendons. Instead of steel, we are using carbon fibers, so you get better life out of it and longer life term out of it than regular steel beams. Next slide. Just some pictures of the progress. Next slide, please. Those are the new beams. You can see the low profile ones on the left side compared to the old ones. They are much narrower than the old ones. Next slide, please. These are some pictures of under the bridge work. So top side, they're working in phase construction, meaning they're working south side and then working north. Under the bridge, they are working at the entirety because they don't have to do it in phase. It's all of the bridge is open underneath of it, so they're basically working on all the repairs. They're working on the substructure repairs, which is piles, and they're doing pile jackets, basically putting jackets on the piles, cleaning them, putting jackets, giving you a longer life term, and waterproofing everything underneath of the bridge, and doing a lot of surface repairs. Next slide, please. Just another picture of the work underneath of the bridge. Next slide, please. Another picture of the work underneath of the bridge. So I was trying to just put some pictures there just to show various components of what is happening basically throughout the bridge. These are just some pictures of the deck work where they did the first 3 spans and then the railing that got put on the site. Next slide, please. All right, that's, I believe, the last slide of the pictures where basically the deck work on the left and then underground substructure work. Next slide. All right, upcoming work. So where are we right now? So you would have seen the traffic shift happen today. So right around like 5:45, we shifted it. So now the work is going to happen on basically on the other side. Rinse and repeat, same thing. We're going to be removing the first 3 spans, like 9 beams. And so we'll be replacing that with brand new beams. We're going to continue to work on surface repairs, the bottom side at the same time as well. And we'll be doing the first 3 spans. Since we are removing the entire deck, we got to remove the sidewalk on the first 3 spans. So we'll be removing that and replacing that and the railings, etc. So what that means is, at least in the near future, like once they start the demo within, I wouldn't say roughly 2 months, 2.5 months, there'll be a full closure like we had in the past where they have to remove the beams, pick the beams up, load it in the truck, get it out. So last few times I mean, knock on wood, we got lucky, we got it done in a couple days, so we're hoping to keep that trend. So it'll be coming up soon. We'll coordinate with Mr. Stallings and try to get enough notice out so we are not impeding any festivities or events, anything going on. So we'll try to be cautious of that. Next slide, please. This is just a scenario just to show where the traffic is flowing now, where the work is going to happen. So traffic is flowing on the north side, and all the work is going to happen on the south side now. So the major thing in this phase is the last phase, the south side was still open, so you had sidewalk access, pedestrian access. Now everything is shifted south. The sidewalk access will be closed. So basically you'll have access up to, coming from here, you'll get access, going from here, you'll have access up to the bridge, basically to the west of the bridge, and then you have to loop around. So you cannot go across the bridge because you're basically, the entire 3 spans, 180 feet will be off, so it'll just be a hole there. Next slide, please. That's basically kind of like a gist of what I talked about. So we're in early 2025 now, so the traffic shift has happened. So all the repairs now will start happening. And then the next bullet about as-needed closures. So we only need like 2 closures for the beam removal, beam placement. So when we're ready to remove the beams, there'll be, usually it's a week-long closure, but we try to get it done early. It's like a total of 9 beams. A lot of times it's outside of our control, like it's based on the trucks coming here, and then they get from Portsmouth. So sometimes they get stuck up, so they can't make it here, or there's accidents, or there's crane issues, etc. So we give an extra day to ourselves, but most times the realistic date is 4 days. And I think last 2 times we got it done in 2.5, 3 days. So we tried to keep that trend moving forward. Next slide. Just the beam removal that I talked about. And when the beam removal happens, I think the sign detour is not going to change. It is still going to be Route 10 and then Main Street. So all the signposts are still there. They're just covered for now. So once we have a full closure, we'll just go remove those, basically remove the signs and then unveil them and open it up. And then once everything is done, we'll close it back again. So nothing major there. This is the last slide, I believe. So this one is just trying to refocus on safety. I think we just had an accident like 2 weeks ago where a citizen ran into an impacted attenuator. So just trying to send a message just to people to be cautious. I know it's 35 on the bridge. Once you get to the other side of the bridge, right at the abutment, it drops to 25. So just to have the people to remind themselves just to not speed through the work zone. We got a lot of people working there, and it's for the safety of the people driving through as well. We got equipment, cranes, etc. So we all want everyone to go home safe at the end of the day. And cyclists, I mean, they can follow the vehicle work zone traffic rules and regulation with respect to pedestrian. As I said before, in this phase, the access will be cut off, and they'll be cut off at the west end of the bridge, and they have to loop around, and they cannot get through the other side of the bridge. I think the last slide would have details of our webpage and just where we have all the information. We are trying to keep that updated with all the PR releases we put out, and we also have pictures. We're trying to upload pictures as we go, so people can log in and just check the progress as we go, like where we are with the project overall. With Cypress Creek, I think that's all the updates. If you all don't have any questions, I'll probably jump to Gray Street. I know my counterpart, George, is not here today, so I got a couple updates from him for Gray Street.
I had one question.
Yes, sir.
If we put up any kind of signs letting the people know they can't walk?
Yes,
over
sir, there's signs.
Yeah.
There we have sidewalk closed signs, and then we have signs to tell people to use the crosswalk to get to the other side. So there's multiple signs out there.
Because that's a lot of foot traffic there, and people have been using the bicycles on it too.
Yes, sir.
So I really don't want, them to go down there thinking they can get across some kind of extra notice or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it would be smart for
Yeah, there's signs there. I think we put press releases, but if it's helpful, we can even add, we were talking today, we can even add additional sign close to the bridge if it's needed. So we'll have 2 sets of signs. So if they miss the first one, they'll have the second
Sure,
one.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Kind of,
Sorry. Yeah.
kind of on that same remark, on the bridge itself, where the gaps are, where the bridge is completely removed, is there some type of barrier that if someone ignores the signs that?
Yes, sir, there will be barriers, that is correct. There'll be barriers, and we'll have barricades, barrier, it'll be completely blocked off.
And any change to the completion date, and what is it?
There's no change to completion date, as of now, it's still fall, September of this year.
Thank you.
With respect to Gray Street, I know you guys saw the work get started, and then the snow season, I think crews were pulled out to help with the snow, and then just the weather didn't cooperate, so they'll be back next week. And George mentioned that they'll be back out next week, just continuing with that. And we are working on a contract to do the FDR, like we talked about. So that contract is under works with potential for 2026, the construction. So we'll work on the contract this season, put it out for bids. Once we get the bids, it'll be a 26 season construction. So the first focus is now for our state forces to go in and do the curbing, which they started, and they'll resume that again next week.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
please. The funding for the paving, the milling and paving, we feel fairly certain that funding will be in place so that we can accomplish the project as it was in place prior?
Yes, sir. As of now, that has been the message that I've received. I haven't received any red flags or anything about funding might not be available. As of now, it is still in the positive.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. About the curbing. Will all of the current curbing be torn up and replaced from one end to the other on Grace?
I don't want to give a wrong answer. I had to check with George because he's in charge of that. I'm not. I believe they were replacing majority of it, but I can double check on that and get back with Mr. Stallings. because he does all the maintenance part of it. I come in for the construction side, so I don't have that information with me right now, unfortunately.
Okay. You may not have the answer to this one either. Is the plan still to grind down the full 18 inches?
For the FDR part of it, that's under works now. I think last time we had 12 inches of FDR, so I think that's still under works, but we are now trying to communicate with, I know we got Columbia Gas down there, so at some point, we have reached out to them to get their as-bills. At some point, we'll reach out to the town to get where your laterals go, et cetera, so we are trying to stay clear of it. So we don't want to get anywhere close to that to hit it. So all those would come into the play where how the FDR thickness would go.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I see Robert is he going to make a presentation here too? Do you need to talk about?
I was here to assist in questions if needed.
I can make it present next time.
Okay, I know y'all have signed up. I didn't know whether you want to speak and complain about something or.
I think he did a fine job. I was more here for technical. I'm more of who you'll see out there day to day as
So-
far as management and job.
Yeah, so one thing I want to say, I think last time we had seen Bob Krickenberger, and he's on a different project now, so Robert Wagner is our construction manager, so you'll probably see him more on a day-to-day basis than I do, so that's why he's here. He knows exactly what's going on a day-to-day basis, so so his job is to not make me look stupid, so I think he's doing a pretty good job with it.
Mr. Mayor, just one other comment if I could.
Yes,
I
yes.
think they opened it up for me when I came across because I came over at 5:45 and they were taking the signs
sir.
down and
I was
everything. I
there.
appreciate that, Gotham. But anyway, it is very, very narrow through there at this point.
Yes, it
And
is.
the rationale for the no wide load vehicles is certainly prudent because it is really, really tight through there, and people need to watch what they're doing if
Yes,
they
sir.
would.
We've already tried to be proactive. We already communicated with DMV. We already put it on VA 511 and our internal LCAM system. So our public affairs person, Kelly, she's great with communicating stuff. So she already talked to DMV. So they have all their database updated based on the wide load restriction. So I think technically, I mean, it's 10-foot 7 lane, and then we have a foot shy line, what we call on either side. So it's 12-foot 7, but the actual travel lane is 10-foot 7.
Now, when you get close to that barrier as you're
Yes.
approaching it, it's not much room to
Yes,
play
sir.
with through there.
That is
for
correct.
Yeah, I noticed that today too. I knew it was going to be tighter because they'd moved the Jersey walls over
Yeah.
real close. So I appreciate you coming out because we get a lot of questions about when is it going to be done, and it's nice to hear that it's still on schedule. So I appreciate that. Y'all have any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Brian Lally from Verizon. I'm sorry. That was your internet. That's your internet email address. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No
Please,
problem.
please come forward.
All right, well, thank you. I felt that there would be some time to be an open forum here to just make a comment about things. And so I'm Brian Lally. I live at 226 South Church Street. I'm here to just ask a question about replacing street light lamps that are burned out on South Church Street and have been, at least the one by Jericho Road and South Church Street, has been out for 5 months. The other one, it just occurred last week where we had a hit and run that took out the lamp between 212 and 220 South Church Street. It's dark there. It's really dark there. It's dangerous, and it should be a safety thing that should prompt Dominion Energy to get out here and replace those, one, the fixture, and then the lamps right by Jericho and South Church Street. And there's another one further down on South Church Street that is out as well. And the one in front of the house next to me has got a green glow to it. I would suspect it's at its life's end on that one. So you got 3 in a row on the south side of South Church Street that are out. The ones on the north side appear to be almost all the way down are in good shape. But I want to mention an incident that happened to a family member back in November. He came up to the stop sign off at Jericho, looked both ways, started to pull out, and a young man on a bicycle came up and hit his car right by the left front tire, flipped over the car, the hood and the car, and landed on the sidewalk. My family member got out to try and assist. The young boy picked himself up, grabbed the bike, and took off. Then our family member backed into our driveway and told us about the incident. That was back in November. Early January, I saw 2 cars coming up near dusk, both without lights on, one coming out of Jericho Road, one coming up South Church Street. Neither one saw each other. This one pulled out of Jericho Road, and this one stopping to turn in, and they almost hit each other. I was out in the yard to see that particular one. So my question to you is, what kind of leverage can the town put on Dominion Energy to come out here and replace these lamps? It seems like it ought to be a simple maintenance thing that they ought to be able to do. So I'm not putting you on the spot. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but 5 months is a long time to replace a light bulb. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
And then Michael has an answer.
Now, I can just address this, because we talked about that 5 months ago.
Yes, sir.
We've got documentation. We have called Dominion several times. Staff called again today. So we have reached out several times since we talked.
I called this morning too.
Right,
Kathy was
earlier
good.
this year. So we will continue to put pressure on Dominion to come out and take care of it. But again, I know staff has called a handful of times, and we haven't seen anything yet, but we'll keep on them until it gets fixed.
It's unfortunate. It is a safety hazard. I don't know what kind of light levels we need to have on the road, but the fact that we position the lamps on either sides of the road to create some sort of a uniform coverage of light levels, we're well below whatever that 2 to 5 foot candle light level is right now. And it's dark. I mean, just drive down there tonight or walk by there tonight and you'll see it. So thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Brian, appreciate it. Michael, I do know that some of our lights are ours, correct?
Yes.
Some of them are VDOT.
Some of ours and
Right.
some are Dominion.
I know there's been some confusion about that in the
Yeah,
past.
South Church
And,
Street is Dominion.
But it's like you said, I know we've always had trouble making sure they got this done, but
Yes, sir.
we've always seemed to get them straight very, very fast.
And
So,
we'll stay on top of them.
okay, appreciate it.
I have a question, Mayor. Michael, what is the protocol in that if citizens see a light that's out, do they call the town, they call Dominion themselves?
They can do
Or how would
both.
they know if it's a town light or a Dominion light? I guess?
If they call the town, then we'll take care of whichever way it needs
Okay,
to be
gotcha.
done. But in this case, when we know it's a Dominion, sometimes a call from a citizen gets quicker response than us, believe it or not. But we'll continue to stay on this one, and when it is ours, we go out and
Sure.
take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, good point. I've talked to Dominion twice.
Okay.
I even had a supervisor come to the house, a man named Mr. Pitts, who was a regional supervisor. He looked up and down and said, oh, yeah, okay, I'll look into that. That was a lot.
Right.
We hear that a lot from
Good all.
VDOT. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
No one else has signed up. Does anyone want to speak anyway at time? Yes, sir, Mr. Hines.
Bob Hines, 216 Washington. Talking about Dominion, the piece of property at the corner of Washington and James, where that light in the middle was fed from the pole right out by the street, right at the edge where the new Clay Street comes out. It's maybe been a year now. I noticed that the panel was down about this level, and the inner cover was off, and the panel was not locked. Somebody could have opened the door, kid stick his hand in there, it's gone. Well, one of my son's friends, one of my 40-year-old son, one of his friends, works for Dominion, and I called him up. I had his number. And I said, Adam, we got a situation out here. He said, well, I'm working in the area the next day, tomorrow. He disconnected it the very next day because it was unsafe. The town has now since gone out and closed it and put a screw in it, which I still don't think is all that good, but, and I think it's connected back, but Adam came out that next day when he was there and disconnected it, boom, done, made it safe. So I don't know, maybe I'll call him and ask him about the lights. I don't know if he can do anything, but I don't mind giving him a
Can't
call.
hurt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Anyone else? If not, we have council comments. No comments from council. At this time, we have the consent agenda. And that starts off with Ms. Butler and her committee.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the updates for the interest corridor overlay and the historic district guidelines. And there have been several discussions around these two documents in planning as well as town council. And basically the updates is to update some terminology and basically the pictures that are in those documents. C2 is a motion to approve the zoning map. Let me pull that up. And basically, the zoning map has been updated to annex parcels, along with changes in the zoning classifications.
Ms. Butler, can I ask a question before we vote?
Yes, sir.
I reviewed both overlays and I would say fine products, both of them. The committee, planning commission, Ms. Clary and the staff did an excellent job. I just had one question on the entrance corridor overlay on page 71. It mentions for Lower South Church Street, future plans to work with VDOT to reduce speed limits in town. And I didn't see that in other components, other numbered components of the entrance corridor overlays. And it would seem on the Upper South Church Street and the approaches to South Church Street on Battery Park, especially with Mallory going in, and maybe from Mallory to the intersection with South Church, distance speed limit reductions would be appropriate there. Certainly if they're appropriate on Lower South Church Street, they'd be appropriate on Upper South Church Street as well. So I just wanted to see if that was also in the plan. I saw in the goals at the end there was mention of speed limit, but nothing specific. So that was the only notable thing that I picked up from the document. But otherwise, it was fantastic. Great work.
Mayor Smith, do we want to pull that item? I know it came up in our committee meetings last week for any additional discussion. Sounds like it is, so we might want to pull that item and vote on it next time.
Well, we can bring it down in the action section. And Bill, do you have a
I was
comment?
just gonna say that the speed limits on South Church Street are not it's not the prerogative of the town council. That's purely dictated by VDOT because they're not town streets. We have no ability to change that. It's a goal. We've been trying for years to get them to reduce the speed limit on the bridge from 35 to 25. And every time we're rebuffed at every turn. I mean, they just won't do it. But it's sort of a goal, but it's a goal. I think it says, doesn't it say that it's a goal to work with them on that, Tammy? Yeah.
It does, and that was what I said, that future plans to work with VDOT to reduce speed limits, but it was only highlighted as a goal on that one stretch of road, Lower South Church Street, so from Town Bank to where it intersects with the bypass. It doesn't mention from Town Bank to the bridge or from Town Bank and the intersection with South Church Street on Battery Park. So it would seem if we were going to have a goal to reduce that speed limit from Battery Park to the bypass, it's 35 now. It would seem silly to reduce that to 25, go back up to 35 as you enter Upper South Church Street, cross the bridge, back down to 25, or turn right onto Battery Park, doing 25 and go immediately to 35. So that's why I was mentioning, if we have that goal, it might be useful for it to be a little broader in application.
Well, it's been a continuing goal of the council over the years to try to get some reductions, but we don't meet VDOT's warrants for reductions in speed limits, and that's been a real frustration because, particularly on the bridge, that's been the real hot item. Everybody's for years wanted that to be one of the prime focal points for reducing speed limit, and they just won't agree.
So I think as an entrance corridor overlay and a plan guideline document, consistency would be appropriate. That's why I mentioned it.
Well, you don't have to vote. You've had your public hearing, so I mean, y'all carried it over to this month for that. I mean, if you want to amend that you could make that amendment tonight and still adopt those.
Mhm.
It's your document, you can do anything you want to with it.
You still want to move it, Ms. Butler, to the action
It
section?
sounds like it needs to be moved.
Okay. all
Okay.
right. We'll move C2 into the action section.
It would be
No, it's
C1.
C1.
You want to, pardon?
C1. It's not the map, it's.
I'm
With the
sorry,
interest.
yes, I'm sorry. Z1,
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
yes.
Bill, the governor's new statement law that communities can lower speed limits, does that not apply to VDOT roads?
I'm not sure, I don't want to give the wrong answer.
Okay.
There is some latitude that they've tried to give us, but I still think don't have the authority on the bridge.
Yeah, I thought we discussed that.
Yeah.
The speed limit has to be a certain amount before local government could reduce it. I thought that's what the law was.
We'll look, 'cause I think there was another revision, but
Yeah.
let us look into that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Butler?
I don't know where we are.
Well, you've already addressed 1 and 2.
We've already done everything.
So I guess the
We're gonna move
invoices
one.
would be next.
We're gonna move one, so. At this time, we have invoices over $20,000 requiring council authorization, and Mr. Brooks.
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion to approve 3 invoices over $20,000. The first being to East Coast Emergency Vehicles for $55,279.64 for the outfitting of police vehicles. Next, we have Core and Main for the water meters that we just ordered for inventory, $30,500. And then lastly, Athens Building Court for continued boardwalk restoration over at Windsor Castle Park for $87,058.95.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. We'll go to the action section, and we'll come back to C1 for more discussion.
You need to deal with your consent agenda first before you go to your action section.
Well, because what I've got is that was it. Oh, yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Motion.
Yes, I need a motion to have the approved C2 and C3 for the consent agendas.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, and we have a second. Mr. Cutler and Mr. Harris was
Mr.
first.
Harris made a motion, Mr. Cutler made a second.
Call for the question, please.
Councilwoman Butler?
Yes.
Councilwoman Liebermeyer?
Yes.
Councilman Brooks?
Yes.
Councilman Cutler?
Yes.
Councilman Bowman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Aye. And now we'll move to the action section, and we'll bring back up C1. Do you want to talk further about that, Ms. Butler? Or do we need to discuss further what you want to amend?
I think if
Yeah,
Ms. Clary wants to amend it, I think we can approve it with an amendment. I don't think there's any need to belabor it. It just seemed like a consistency point to have a goal that affects, it makes if we were to follow through and execute that goal right now, we'd have a 25-mile-per-hour island sandwiched between 35 on 2 intersections, two other pieces of street, and then 45 on the bypass. So it wouldn't really, if we were able to achieve that goal, it would not really make sense. So I think just making our goals consistent in that regard would be appropriate.
So that was pulled from the comprehensive plan to reduce speed limits along the entire corridor. It was only separated out to kind of distinguish separate goals for those areas. That's not to say that the entire South Church Street wasn't part of the goal. Again, we were trying to distinguish and separate them because we did have the lower South Church Street and the Battery Park to the bridge. But we can also repeat that goal in the Battery Park to the bridge, and just include it in there as well.
Yeah.
Good amendment,
Yeah, I think just a consistency thing. I wasn't sure what the justification was for why it didn't match up, and it just, if I was a citizen reading it and trying to build a home in the area or follow the ECO guidelines, I might be confused.
Anybody have any more questions for Tammy? If not, do we have a motion to amend?
I'll make a motion to amend as discussed.
To approve as amended.
Yeah,
How about that?
approve it.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
Okay,
Thank you.
We have a motion by Mr. Cutler. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mary Ellen Beavermeyer. Any other questions? If not, call for the question, please.
Councilwoman Butler?
Yes.
Councilwoman Biedermeyer?
Yes.
Councilman Brooks?
Yes.
Councilman Cutler?
Yes.
Councilman Bowman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Okay, we'll move now to the approval of town council summary minutes.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I reviewed the minutes and I made some minor corrections and would recommend that the minutes be approved as corrected.
So
We have a
moved.
motion? We have a motion by Steve.
Second.
Second, we have a second by Mr. Cutler. Any questions? If not, call for the question.
Councilman Brooks?
Yes.
Councilwoman Butler?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harris?
Yes.
Councilwoman Biedermeyer?
Yes.
Councilman Cutler?
Yes.
Councilman Bowman?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Next on the agenda is new business. Anyone have any new business to bring before council? Hearing none, we have old business.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
you will recall a couple of months ago, I brought up the concept of considering the debt that SRA, or the debt service that SRA, Smithfield Recreation Association, still has with the town of Smithfield. I checked with the town manager today and determined that that debt service is about $120,000. You may also remember that we were able, we received the report from Treasurer Ross that we had accumulated approximately $129,000 in interest from the $6 million that we ultimately returned. That was a transaction from Mr. Luter. Since that time, we've had a chance to hear from Mr. Derek Joyner, who has been a longtime member and official with SRA, and explained to us the plight of SRA, the strides that they have taken, the work that they have done, and the fact that they have, according to Ms. Novak and Mr. Stallings, continued to keep up their end of the bargain as far as that debt service payment was concerned. In the interest of advancing and supporting our youth sports in the town of Smithfield, I would like to make a motion at this time that this council authorize the allocation of $60,000 from the $120,000+ interest that we allocated or accumulated from the $6 million to the debt service of Smithfield Recreation Association. And I think it's the right thing to do. I think we have, as a council, always looked out to try to better the town and try to better the livelihoods for our young people, the sports and things like that. And after listening to Mr. Joyner, what they could do with the time and effort that they're putting forward as far as raising the money and fundraisers to improve Beal Park, I think it's the appropriate thing to do. So at this time, I humbly and respectfully request that we reallocate $60,000 to SRA as far as their debt service is concerned.
Have a motion by Mr. Bowman. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Have a second by Mr. Harris. Any further discussion?
I'd like to discuss, I think originally when you brought it up, Steve, you said to defer their whole debt. So now you're just asking for $60,000?
At this time, I would think also we could later reconsider if the time was appropriate during our budget cycle, during the formulation of the upcoming budget, then maybe consider the other, but at the present time, I'm just asking for $60,000 at this time, which is half of their debt.
They've made their payment for their past payment, correct?
Correct.
All right, they have $120,000 remaining.
I'm not in favor of the request, well, for various reasons. And it has nothing to do with supporting young people, because I'm an advocate for young people and I do support them, but I don't feel it's the best use of funds. One of my concerns is when it first came up, the discussion was to make sure that we're fair and equitable to both organizations. And I never really got a clear answer to that, and I don't understand. There was a comparison between what we spent on that concession building and what SRA actually owes the town, and I don't really understand the correlation between the both of them. The only way that I would think it would be fair and equitable is to divide the interest in half and give both organizations half of the funding. Not real sure. You know, I know that Smithfield Packers youth sports are struggling, and we all saw the spreadsheet that was given to us that staff had put together. Clearly, the maintenance that's required of both teams are not the same. I have had several conversations, some with staff, some with other people, you know, around this. And I had a conversation with Michael one time, and Michael, it seems as though the town has some concerns about how much money we had spent in reseeding the football field. Now, I don't really know a whole lot about maintenance of the sports facility, but football is a different sport than baseball, and I can't imagine the two fields having the same amount of damage done to it. But I also requested copies of the leases, and they were sent to us. Smithfield Packers Youth Sports seem to be doing what we have requested them of. And if we have some concerns about not seeding the football field, or we need to look at renegotiating that contract. Personally, when you look at the participants on both sports culturally, and I didn't want to get into this portion of the conversation. Traditionally, football has been a black sport, baseball has been a white sport, but I will tell you, economically, you're dealing with two groups of people that financially and the resources, they're different. SRA has been around for 60 plus years. If you can date yourself back to what was happening 60 years ago here in Isle of Wight County. The kids that are participating now, and probably the parents, don't even realize the history behind Beal Park. Black kids could not belong to Beal Park during that time. And I guess part of my problem is I need to forget what's happened in the past, but I'm also a firm believer that if you forget the past, if you don't know your past, then you're bound to repeat it. I don't really see how we can request of that interest that's earned on Mr. Luter's money that is now town's money, where we're going to give half of it to one organization and not give half of it to another organization. So, you know, I cannot support that request.
Yes,
Mr. Mayor, may I respond?
well,
All I'm gonna say this, I understand this Mr. Bowman's motion here, but this is a receivable. Their obligation to the town is a written commitment, and it's really not, this doesn't need to be a cash transaction. So I think this is something that needs to be, if there's any, it's more complicated than just what you said. And so it seems to me there ought to be Mr. Stallings, and we need to figure this out about how we should handle this, because I don't know that a cash transaction is what you're really talking about.
What
what-
happened in the past when there was a change in that agreement was an addendum to their lease, which is what converted it from a lump sum to payments.
Right.
So that may be the appropriate route. I'm not sure, but
Can I ask a question and maybe add something to the discussion? First, have they made their 2025 payment? Is that, I mean, there's no urgency to this.
all the 2024 payments are done.
Okay. So there's no urgency, right?
No, I mean, the next payment's due at the end of the year.
Okay. It seems like, and you know, I think both of these discussions have merit. I mean, our youth sports are hugely important, and we have a Parks and Rec committee and a Parks and Rec department head, and it might be appropriate for that committee and the department head to get together and say, you know, we have this pot of money, $129,000 it sounds like, and how can we spread this out to all our youth groups in town? There may be some youth groups that aren't represented by baseball or football that could use some money as well. So, you know, rather than, you know, a little back and forth about it, it may be, I would recommend that the Parks and Rec committee get together and come up with a plan and propose it to the council. I think that might be an appropriate way to move forward.
Is this money specifically tied to Parks and Rec and youth sports? I mean, it could be used for anything. I'm just asking.
I think Michael can answer that.
There are no stipulations on what the town does with the interest money that was earned.
Because I have a kind of a bigger question. Valerie, I hear where you're coming from, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I have kind of a bigger picture is that, and Steve, I get baseball's great, you know, very supportive of SRA. They're obviously a very good organization. So this is not about SRA specifically, but I mean, we have kids that play baseball, we have kids that play football, we have kids that hang out at the library, we have kids that go to scouts, we have kids that, you know, we have the Tidewater Free Clinic, we have COP, we have a lot of things that money could be spent on, and $60,000 is a lot of money for one entity. I mean, I think if we even look at, and like I said, they do good things. Don't get me wrong. I commend the work that they do and what the families involved. But I think it's, you know, and we're talking here at the last meeting where we have water and sewer rates that are going to be going up. Maybe some of that money should go to that. You know, we have people that have trouble paying their water bills. I mean, we always have issues of someone needing extra money. So I have some bigger concerns about that, and I'm still having to think about that. Darren, I take your point though about maybe Parks and Rec looking into it. I mean, that would be one place to spend the money if we have to spend it. I mean, I don't know that we have to spend that money either.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
$600,000+ is a lot of money as well. And back to Ms. Butler's point, I wasn't speaking about one organization versus the other. That's why I couched it in the form of a global perspective of us looking out for all of the kids. And the fact that Ms. Butler seems to be under the impression that football is one thing and baseball is another, I don't necessarily buy into that program. It's an individual decision by the child that wants to play or doesn't want to play. We just met when I was mayor, probably 2 months after I was mayor. Ms. Novak,
She's over here.
over there, they requested a meeting with myself and Ms. Novak, and we had some ARPA funds because the specific organization that Ms. Butler's referring to was asking for the need for restrooms, concession stand, things like that. And they had asserted that they could not get a meeting with the mayor. As soon as they asked for a meeting, I was there and met with them. We put it together, we brought it to council under ARPA funds. We ended up putting that project together. In fact, we just wrote the last invoice to pay that off, which I think far exceeds the amount of $60,000 that I'm asking for to assist this specific entity in this undertaking. Don't want to be divisive. I just want to be fair. And this group has worked long and hard. As you've heard Mr. Harris also say, Vice Mayor Harris indicate, I've been out there in February's with the shovel and the hoe and the rake. And I know what their bathrooms look like. If you were to go into their bathroom at Beale Park, if it's still the way that it was, there are two separate bathrooms. Each one of them has a stool, a toilet, and each one has a sink in it. That's what you see at Beale Park. You go and look at that concession stand that we just built with ARPA funds, which are town funds, which the money could have been used for a number of different things, but we didn't. We used it for there. I'm asking for a mere $60,000 to take the burden off their back in a somewhat respectable manner so that they can use the money and the time. More especially the time is important for them to spend with those kids and spend fixing up Beale Park than it is anything else. That's what I'm imploring for this evening. And I believe it's fair. I believe it's the right thing to do. The money did not, again, to Ms. Biebermeyer's point, that money did not cost the town anything. It did not come out of the pocket of the taxpayer. Nonetheless, I will readily admit, it is taxpayer dollars now. But I do believe that that money can be allocated and should be allocated to assist this group who's worked long and hard for many years. And I will tell you, I have coached out there before, and it was not a segregated group of kids that were out there. It was kids, both sides. One lived right across the street that came, and he ended up being a great basketball player. He left baseball, but was a great basketball player at Smithfield High School. That's what I'm asking for, and that's why I'm asking for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any further comments?
Yeah, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bowman, how do you envision the structure of the debt repayments being done? So it was 120, hopefully you knock it down to 60. Are we going to let them go a couple years without any payments?
One payment, whatever their one payment is at a time. And I think, or we could do it, quite honestly, $60,000. And then if the town decides during the budget discussions that that's all they're going to get, that's all they get. But we'll put it toward what their annual payment is. And at this time, reduce it down by $60,000 to leave them a residual. And then the town, or as Mr. Riddick had indicated, it can be renegotiated as far as what their debt service is going to be for X number of years.
That's I guess what I'm asking is, have you thought that through to
Yes.
say what it would look like?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
in rebuttal to what Councilman Bowman just said, maybe it's the way that I'm looking at it, it does not seem fair and equitable to me. He compares what SRA owes us and the $600,000 concession building that we just built. And to me, one has nothing to do with the other. First of all, the old concession stand that's out there, no one else can actually rent that now other than SRA because they have propriety of that. What alarmed me when I first got on town council is that the town never had a master plan for Luda Sportsplex. And personally, I don't really think we needed 2 concession stands, but because we did not have a master plan, we were in a position that the football side needed a concession stand. And neither one of those concession stands belong to either one of those organizations. They are town property. So what we spent on that concession stand And I don't really know how much we spent on the other, but inflation and cost of materials and all have probably caused their prices to escalate. Now, I've had several conversations with Mr. Bowman, and in one of the conversations, I needed to clarify part of the conversation because he made the statement to me that Mr. Luter would probably be in agreement to what he wanted to do. And I don't doubt that one bit, because when Luter Sportsplex was originally built, it was built here primarily for baseball. So if Mr. Luter is agreeable to it, I would feel better if he had just taken all of his money back and wrote SRA a check to pay off the debt to the town of Smithfield. But I think to give one organization half of the interest and not do anything for the other organization is not equitable in my sight.
I would like to make one comment about that. The interest money, I question why we didn't send that back to Michael, and I think Mr. Riddick and I had even talked about it too. We would be acting like a bank service for that individual to give us money, and then we would pay them interest. So it wasn't something that we could do legally. Is that correct?
He didn't ask for it. All he asked for was his principal back.
Right.
And that's, I mean, it's his money, and he gave it to you with the opportunity for you to keep it, and you chose not to. And so he asked for his principal back, and it's effectively a gift to the town.
Michael, can you comment on that?
The letter that asked for the money back clearly stated the town was to keep the interest and use it as we saw fit.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
I have a question about, Ms. Butler, when you were talking about the SRA concession stand, are you talking about the one that's at the Luter Sports Complex that
Yes, ma'am.
they can only use that one? I wasn't.
There are two concession buildings now at Luter
Right.
Sports. The lease agreement with SRA gives them the ability to operate the one in the back of the facility.
Right, okay,
So that's what she was referring to.
okay. But nobody else can use that? I mean, if other teams rent that area, no one else is allowed to use that
They
concession
have-
stand, or?
Well, I mean, they
I'm sorry,
have
no.
the first right of refusal, so if they elect not to operate it, then somebody else can come in and operate it. I mean, that's my understanding. And so, but historically, they have not elected to operate it. But they do have the first right of refusal anytime that there's an event to operate the concession stand as part of their lease agreement.
And who operates the concession stand, the new one that we just built?
It will be Smithfield Packers Youth Sports.
Okay. And if somebody else comes in and rents that, then they have access to that, or they don't? I mean, aren't these town buildings that anybody
Well, I
should
mean,
be able to use,
But
or?
no, they're part of those lease.
That's
and
part of the lease
MOU
agreements. Okay, I
arrangements
got you.
we have.
Okay.
I would just like to make a second plea that, rather than have a divisive vote, that a better decision be made on what we want to do with that money wholly. And if it's to spend it on our youth, which I think is an honorable use of that money that anyone could support, that we take a greater look at the whole of town and see where we can smear that money across all our youth groups, including SRA, including the football team, and including anybody else that's applicable, to make a better use that affects a majority of the children in the town of Smithfield.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Excuse me. Part of my reason speaking in favor of this when it first came up and seconding the motion here has less to do with the past and more to do with the present. SRA works with their hands tied behind their back to get the things that they need to do at Beal Park. They're responsible for their own maintenance. As Steve has referred to, and as I participated for 7, 8 years, cold winter days are, all that work is done by volunteers. The field at Luter Sports, the town takes care of. The second thing is the cost fees involved. I'm struck by the fact that SRA contributes $25,000 a year through their lease agreements, while the Smithfield Packers football youth group, over the last 7 years, the most that they have paid is $3,775. There is a great deal of money generated by SRA to meet their obligations and contribute to the successful management of both programs, to give them a relief so that they can go about their business, use some of that relief money to upgrade Beale Park. To oppose that on the face seems counterintuitive to me. And I just wanted to make that public statement for that.
Council, Vice Mayor Harris, I appreciate what you've said. However, that was a decision that SRA made to the town of Smithfield to contribute, to pay the town $300,000 to sell Beale Park. And then they decided not to sell Beale Park, and we amortized the $300,000 over a 10-year period of time with no interest. Now, the contract that they pay $30,000 a year for their debt, and they agreed to pay $25,000 a year or a season, whatever it is, I can't remember now, to have first right of refusal of Luda Sportsplex. That's a decision that they made. And I'm not saying that they're not working hard. I'm sure they are. But that was a financial decision that they made that they felt like they could handle. To state what Smithfield Packers Youth Sports have paid based on that spreadsheet that was sent us, that was a contract that was negotiated by the town and Smithfield Packers Youth Sports. So you can't, to me, it's not comparing apples to apples. Both contracts were negotiated separately by the town of Smithfield, by both organizations. To make it equal, the town could have said, Smithfield Packers, you need to pay us $25,000 a year. That's equal to what the other organization is paying us. But that's not the stance that we took. So the two means of income that we're getting and what you've said, comparing the two, it's not an equal comparison. But Smithfield Packers Youth Sports, I do know, is behind in making their payment for 2024. So that's the most negative that I know we could say right now. Both of them are abiding by the contracts that were agreed to by the town of Smithfield and by both organizations. So saying what Smithfield Packers Youth Sports has paid, comparing it to SRA, it's not a fair comparison.
Well, when you deal with the maintenance, it's not a fair comparison either as far as what the town's keeping up over there.
I agree,
And also,
but that's...
let me finish. That's not the fair, but at the same time, would you also argue then that, and I did not want to get into a divisive thing about Smithfield Packers versus SRA. That was not my intent at all. But now that it's gotten to this point, would you then think that the Smithfield Packers Youth Group ought to be paying $25,000 a year to the town of
No, I
Smithfield?
don't. But we can't compare that because that's not the contract that they have. And the maintenance of both teams is written in their contract, and the town never said, Smithfield Packers Youth Sports, we want you to maintain your own field. Based on that contract or the lease, it says that the town would maintain their fields. If we don't want to do that, then we need to renegotiate a contract with them. And I don't want to be divisive about it either, because clearly nobody else feels as sensitive about it as I do.
Yes.
And I'm not going to change my mind about
Sure.
it.
Yes, sir.
There's a motion and a second on the floor.
Yes, it is.
Call the question.
I would just say real quick before we do that usage also is different. Baseball is a much higher frequency of usage than football. But before we call the question, clearly we have a divisive issue. I would recommend to my fellow council members that we don't make a decision on this tonight, and we take some more time to think about it. There's no urgency. Smithfield Youth Sports, SRA is not behind on their payment. They don't have a payment due until the end of the year. I support giving some funds to Smithfield Youth Sports, support giving some funds to the football team, but I think we can get some unity instead of division and make a better decision than rush into a vote on this tonight.
Yeah, I'm not ready to vote on this. I'm really not.
Well, the appropriate thing would be to make a substitute
I was gonna
motion.
say, do you wanna amend your motion?
I'm not amending mine. If
He's-
they want to make a substitute motion, we can.
Mr. Bowman's correct. The
Right.
parliamentary procedure would be a substitute motion. And the substitute motion, based on what I hear from this, would be to table the matter for consideration at your next committee meetings. Based on what I hear, that sounds like where you're going with this. But it's your motion, it's not mine. I'm just suggesting that's the way to do it if that's what you want to do.
Thank you for the clear guidance on that. So I would like to make a substitute motion, Mr. Mayor, to table this for further discussion by the committee to make a more whole approach so we can make a better decision.
All right, we have
I
a
would
motion-
second that.
Have a motion, we have a second.
You have to vote on your substitute motion
Yes,
first.
that's right.
And
Any other further discussion on substitute motion?
just as a point of clarification, when you say the committee, which committee do you want it to go to?
It seems best at this point for Parks and Rec, unless Ms. Biebermeyer had a different suggestion, but her approach is looking at a little bit more of a not only sports, but she's the chairman of Parks and Rec, so I think she can bring that to the discussion as the chairman of Parks and Rec. And then I think, Mr. Harris, you're on Parks and Rec, and Ms. Butler. I'm sorry, not Mr. Harris, Mr. Brooks. So I think that the committee, working with the department head for Parks and Recs, could look at, how we manage this money and get it out to our youth. Do I need to rephrase?
No, not really.
Okay.
And as Mr. Members of council, as a practical matter, it would be under that committee, but you all sit together in committee, so it's not like you're not all present. It would be, Ms. Biebermeyer could convene with Mr. Stallings to assemble the information, and then you would take it up at your committee meetings.
Yeah, I think based on the amount of discussion we've had, that, the committee may need to meet and have a more in-depth conversation. They may need to request some resources from Parks and Rec or from the rest of the town staff. So,
If you're gonna meet, you have to give notice.
yeah, no.
So three of you are gonna meet, you have to let Mr. Stallings know and give notice of your meeting. If you're gonna meet before your regularly scheduled committee meetings.
So the motion is?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'd just like to ask one more question before we vote on one or both. Ms. Novak, maybe Michael, wasn't the original contract with SRA for the use of 5 fields, not 4?
Yes, sir, you're correct, and there's only 4 that were actually finished. The 5th field was graded but not built out, and is currently where Smithfield Packard Youth Sports uses as a practice field. So that 5th field was never constructed, but was graded and was called out that way in the lease for future expansion.
Okay, so I guess my point is the original contract really has not been met by the town over these years. Is that correct?
You could, potentially, it did call out, it did indicate in the contract that it was not finished, but it was graded. But I am not aware of them having ever used it, and currently the football organization does use that as their practice field. So my understanding is that SRA has never used that area that was designated as Field 5.
Thank you.
Michael or Amy, can you shed some light on the committee that just met and the draft of what you all are looking for Luda Sportsplex to look like?
You're referring to the committee that, there's a master plan that's in works for potential future expansion of Luder Sports Complex. After that, the initial draft was drafted, we did meet with both of those organizations and provide them with a copy of that for their input. It did include the potential of a small T-ball field that could be that fifth field if it was constructed. And then it would also include construction, again, conceptually right now, of another baseball complex that the town would retain rights to that we could then rent out as a tournament facility. We did look at the possibility of trying to squeeze in another football facility in that. Due to space limitations, right now we were able to do like a 50-yard flag football field. They do run a flag football program. We could only fit a 100-yard field in if it had pretty much no end zones. It was a fence at the end of the 100 yards, which we didn't think was necessarily safe. So right now, that plan is still under works. The engineers are still trying to rehash it so we bring it back to that group. But the bulk of that project was for town use to do tournaments with. It did include parking that would benefit both organizations, and potentially that fifth, it would be a small T-ball field that they could use as their fifth field. But there is no funding identified for that conceptual build out, but it was work that we had started to see what we could do there.
I mean, and Vice Mayor, I would say that even lends further to further discussion of this. Maybe it would be appropriate to spend this $129,000 on completing the baseball complex or other upgrades to our sports facilities, but making a brash, divisive decision tonight, I think would be inappropriate. And I think the substitute motion stands.
Any other discussion? We have a motion on the floor, we have a second. Would y'all like to have the motion heard again so you'll understand what you're voting on?
You want to tell you what I think it was?
No, no. I think Darren can, he can do that. He can let us know what-
Substitute motion to send this matter to committee, Parks and Rec Committee specifically.
And we have a second for that.
It's already been made, second.
Yeah, right. I said we have a second, yes. Yeah. Call for the question.
Councilman Cutler?
Yes.
Councilman Bowman?
No.
Councilwoman Butler?
Yes.
Councilman Brooks?
No.
Vice Mayor Harris?
No.
Councilwoman Biebermeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
No.
4-3.
Motion fails. We have another motion. It was presented by Mr. Bowman. Would you like to repeat that motion?
Yes, sir. I'd like to move that we allocate $60,000 of the interest money that was derived from the interest of the $6 million, and it go to defraying, or it goes to the debt service of the residual that remains to be paid by SRA, Smithfield Recreation Association, to the town of Smithfield.
We have a motion. We have a second by Mr. Harris. Call for the question.
Councilman Cutler?
No.
Councilman Bowman?
Yes.
Councilwoman Butler?
No.
Councilman Brooks?
No.
Vice Mayor Harris?
Yes.
Councilwoman Biebermeyer?
No.
Mayor Smith?
4-3.
Motion fails. This can be brought back up at a committee meeting if needs be, so there's no need in badgering this anymore. So I feel like we did accomplish some good ideas tonight on that, and I look forward to Parks and Recreation Committee. further discussion of this. Any other thing to come before council tonight in old business? If not, meeting is adjourned.